Well, welcome back.
Hello.
Um, the next episode, episode 9, of the Cutting Room Law, our
Episode
very
9.
scuffed D&D podcast.
Welcome
How
back,
have you been,
Seb,
Nick?
our one and only loyal listener.
Yeah, the rest of you guys, you don't mean the same to us, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I do want to say, Seb, you don't know when we're recording this, but you were right, and I'm going to leave it at that.
no, no,
Uh,
no, he wasn't. We're
we
just
can
gonna
just,
ignore
you
that.
can work it out via context, Seb, but you were right. You were right. I can confirm. Anyway, what are we talking about today, Chris?
We're basically gonna cover the from the start of the campaign, time willing, hopefully to where we are currently with the campaign. I know that we kind of mentioned it. We've dropped hints with the episode where we had Felix on, but the aim is to kind of really catch everyone up to speed on the whole kind of Ferron arc, as it's been dubbed, and then just kind of lead in and answer some questions about that.
So, do we want to start off then with our journey towards Veron? Because we began it, I believe, back in Garovia when we got there for the second time to kill the beast.
Yes, so we hadn't covered the beast fight. So effectively there was this beast that was going around eating everyone in this area, like just consuming everything. And the kind of telltale signs you'd had were like these weird, almost like centipede like tracks. But it was just an amalgamation of different things. Like you'd see human handprints mixed with like hoof prints mixed with like footprints. It was bizarre.
We thought, it was some kind of like insectoid that spat acid to sort of, get what it wanted. So, something that melted its victims and then stuck it onto its body like hunting trophies.
Yeah.
Which was gross.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. From your guys' perspective, it was maybe a hunting trophy. Me knowing what the creature was, I can tell you it was basically just out of hunger. This creature was a thing called a Danks Oni, which I'll pop a picture from. It's from
sorry,
it's actually
Danks Oni. Yeah, we would come across him and he had like red eyes and just seemed so chill the whole time.
Yeah. He was a big fan of that Zaza. So,
no, that's not what happened. We were actually in quite a dire state. I mean, we had lost Herschel.
Yeah. Ever since the incident at the Tower of Storms, I think it was.
Yeah. Ever since Absalon did absolutely nothing wrong and made no mistakes. Unfortunately, Herschel did get torn apart by a pack of herpes. Herpes? Harpies. He received a terrible disease from hanging out with the party. No, he got torn apart by harpies, and his body got like dropped into the mouth of a shark. I think something like along those lines. No, he didn't. He didn't because they recovered the body.
No, he almost went into the. It was Absalon that was almost eaten by sharks.
That's right.
Because you guys had arrived at this spooky looking tower, and you couldn't fight the urge to go inside. And then Absalon, I think what happened is there was a fight inside, and there was some kind of fire. And we have this kind of we're running with this rule at the moment that allows you to kind of take injuries if you're knocked down. I think Absalon took an injury, and he was kind of lit on fire and was running around, and then he ran outside into the harpies. And Herschel, I think you went to go and help him, and by doing so, you
I mean, Absalon had a way out. He teleported. Herschel had no such convenient power, and he got torn to shreds, which was unfortunate because he was the only healer really in the party.
Although that didn't do much for Coolius, who was eaten by a pack of stray lions that he was trying to pet.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we'd lost Coolius right at the beginning. I mean, that was a pretty shocking death, given that it was like the first session or second, like so early on. I did think Herschel was going to last longer. I was pretty upset about that because, like we had gone over the lore with Herschel quite well, and we just left his monastery, so we had lots of Herschel things, and then he died like immediately afterwards. Yeah. So I was like,
I think it was also after like you'd come down to see me, and we'd like talked loads about his backstory and got it all fleshed out. And then immediate death.
Immediate death. It went poorly. But besides that, so as a temporary character, because Herschel was dead, I came out as I came back as one of the other monastery sort of denizens. I came back as Brother Zecht, who was loosely based off the TF2 doctor, the medic.
Yeah, he gave off similar crazy vibes.
So like essentially mad biologist, ex-Valdemite, ex-Valdemite torturer. So in the monastery, the players went into Brother Zecht's room and they were like, doctor tools, the pliers and tweezers and thumb like squeezers and all this like other really suspect stuff. And that's who they were relying on to heal them, given that he was an alchemist.
Yeah, well, I think he also gave the party I think the party early on was exposed to some form of kind of disease, and he gave the party some very sus-looking vaccines. I think, did you guys all take it?
Yes, it was a vaccine for like the blight, I think. Definitely a Dundellan pathogen. But Zenobia got some bad news on that front.
Yeah, turns out the sickness Zenobia has, it can't be fixed very easily. I guess we'll get a bit more into Zenobia's backstory in like an episode when we bring Seb on to talk about it. But for just brief notes, Zenobia is effectively on like the brink of the death from a disease, and it's not progressing, but it's not getting any better. And so she had kind of come and hoped that Brother Zecht might have a solution. Sadly, he didn't.
I mean, the way that we sort of overheard and understood it was that the disease was almost keeping her like alive or maybe animate. Yeah. So without it, she would like degrade within a matter of days.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I think this is maybe where you might have heard slightly wrong. It is
very possible. It was a while ago now.
Yeah. So you are right that she's got the disease and it's basically stagnant. But what Brother Zecht told her was that, in effect, her pact, this deal that she had made, is the only thing keeping her body from being fully consumed by this disease. In effect, like there's been like a time stop cast almost on the disease itself until this pact is either broken.
So she's kind of like Iron Man. She's been thrust in, and the only thing keeping the disease from destroying her body is the car battery magnet that is her pact.
Yeah. I never thought about it like that, but now that you say it, Zenobia's backstory is basically Iron Man.
Yeah. The Iron Lady.
Well,
maybe not.
Pull up the Margaret Thatcher memes there.
Zenobia Thatcher. Yippee! Close the coal mine.
You're not trying to unionize again.
Yes, these workers need a bit of whipping.
Oh my god!
You can't say it. She didn't say it. You don't know what she said behind closed doors.
That is true. That is true. In between sessions, Zenobia is a monster.
Yeah. Well, she was always a monster. She's just like comparatively a good guy by virtue of her party members.
Yeah. But either way, you guys kind of gone around the local area, solving minor quests, quote unquote, completing a D&D starter adventure, which had been like reflavored and things changed. And then you had got to you'd gone back and you had basically set a trap at the place where it all started. which was on the hill where Culius had died.
Yeah. I just want to preface. My fucking plan. I want to take credit for that 100%. Because
it was big brain.
Zect could make potions of flying. So the plan was to make an enormous sort of gore stuff and shove it right at the top of the tower. And then for us, who had flying potions, to be up there with it. Now, we noticed that the tower itself wasn't especially structurally sound. So we weakened a few of the support structures, support columns a bit. And then I believe we put explosives at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I and then two others, Absalom being one of them, stood at the top because it was the people capable of flight. Yeah. And so we lured the monster, this enormous and quite horrified creature, huge, right? Not just large, but huge.
Yeah, I think it was probably about like 12 to 15 feet long.
Jesus Christ, like a whale.
Yeah, it was creepy. And yeah, not as wide, but like I'll flash the picture back up again. It is horrifying. And effectively it gets longer and longer and bigger as it eats things, and it just adds mass onto it.
So it's like a sort of like a human centipede, essentially.
Yeah, and it gets worse and more gross because it has a breath weapon, and its breath weapon. I'm not sure if you remember
I was gonna talk about the breath weapon. You wanted to. Our plan was so good that when it climbed up the tower, it burst through the. It burst through the roof, and then it fell down. It had the falling damage, and then the building collapsed on top of it.
Yeah,
and it dealt like what? How much damage did we say it dealt? Like,
I think it must have been like close to like 100. It was
close to. So yeah,
effectively, like I had taken this monster, and because typically it's a CR9, at least that's what they've done it with Grim Hollows. And I nerfed it a little bit, like lowered its AC by a couple, put its hit points down a couple, so that it was like an actual fair fight between a group of PCs that I think at the time were level 3 or 4.
Level 3, yeah.
And so it done that, and then I was like, oh my god, you guys might almost one-shot it with a building.
I mean, it was whew, and then that was a moment, like, we could see you visibly debating in your head whether you wanted us to have this thing instantly die or if you wanted us. But like, it was clear it had abilities that you wanted to show off. I was like, he's not dead yet.
I was just like, oh no. I was like, okay, maybe I've nerfed it a bit too much. But like, it was just, you had done so much damage that by the end of it, I was like, okay. The annoying thing is, I'm gonna get like one turn off with this thing.
It did. I think it still managed to down someone. Like it still
Yuri?
Managed to down Galai or Yuri or someone like that.
Yeah, so I think the reason it being able to down Yuri is because Yuri was acting as bait, and so he chased Yuri, slashed him a couple times, and then the whole thing happens. He comes crawling out, just a mess of broken bones and clearly having a hard day at the office. And then Yuri just completely tanked a breath weapon, going down, and then on the next turn, I think, who was it that got the final blow on this monster?
It wasn't me. I think I would have been more annoying if I had gotten it. I think it might have been Zenobia.
Yeah,
the Eldritch machine gun.
I feel like from now on we got to keep tabs, at least from now on, like we're on the campaign, keep tabs on like everyone's kill count, just to like
who gets the killing blow
campaign. Yeah,
that's right. We need stats. That's what we've been missing. We need stats.
We've got the campaign MVP.
We need to come up with little like awards. Most hit points lost. This character. It's like once you lose a total number of hit points equal to like an ancient dragon's health, you win like a little award.
Yeah, you just get like a little medal that appears on your
You get like an
character's,
extra feat.
armor.
You get the toughness feat for free.
Ooh, I quite like that idea actually. Like if you take, I feel like you get to an ancient dragon's amount of hit points very quickly in a campaign. But if you take like, I don't know, 8,000 points of damage over a campaign, probably a bit less, maybe like 4,000. You should then get like, free feat, have tough, or have resistance.
I guess it's not too different to when you've awarded the inspiring leader feat for a particularly good PC dialogue.
Yeah, and I feel like doing stuff like that and giving it to you as players, especially since like we rarely ever play up to level 20 anyway, is just a cool way of giving you guys rewards. So I think I will implement that in the future.
Yeah, the feats rarely change our stats, and they're pretty situational most of the time.
Yeah, and if they do have uses, you just get more options to choose from. It's not like you're able to stack multiple things on top of each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, after this, you had effectively defeated the monster. You were able to cash in, get your sweet reward, and then you then start heading towards Faron. And at this time, your kind of impetus for heading to Faron was that you, I think you'd found some board like quests, and you knew that people wanted work done there. You wanted to earn a bit of money. You wanted to go investigate. And then when you arrived, you had actually you were handed, I think, a newspaper, like an in-game newspaper that I had made with the help of my my wonderful co-writer ChatGPT, and it had a bunch of like stories and some like magical hair adverts, stuff like that, just random bullshit. And then there was like one that was about a series of rather gruesome and grisly murders that had happened in the city of Faron at the time. And you guys took it upon yourself to hunt down this murderer and bring them to justice. Of course, because that you would get paid for it. But you weren't asked by anyone to do it. You took the initiative. Do you remember anything about that kind of events and what happened around that?
I remember that first of all, Zek left the party. He went back to the monastery, and they met with Poacher. So Poacher approached them. He was one of Brimley's contacts, because Brimley had been gone for a while, but Brimley was like the spyware network guy. And so Poacher had been subcontracted essentially to work for them. A guy who lived up to his name. Like, he sort of previously had done a lot of poaching. Like, he hunted rare game on people's private land. And that got him a bit of trouble. But Brimley had bailed him out, so he was doing him a favor. I remember that we went on the road. There were some... Blimey, what encounters did we have?
On the way there, I think one of the memorable encounters was that you walked into a tavern, and I think you tried to steal some horses, because at this point it kind of become a little bit more apparent that Yuri had a bounty on his head and was running from it.
That's right. We found a poster of Yuri. We found a poster, and I was like, Yuri, what the fuck? It was an incredibly accurate drawing of Yuri, and Yuri was like very dodgy and evasive when we tried to ask him about it. He just kept insisting that we need to go down to Faron. We didn't know that he anything about the Stone Clingers or any of this other stuff. We barely knew he was a were person, because most of us had forgotten until he turns into one occasionally. So that came as a bit of a shock, I think. Because Yuri, he was like the most dependable person in the party, really. Zenobia was perhaps one of the more practical ones, but Yuri was certainly the most dependable.
Yeah, Yuri just kind of had like he was continuously stable throughout. Like never had any issues. Could handle himself in combat.
Absolutely.
and just didn't have the raw pizzazz that Absalom did.
Well, he at that point he hadn't made any suicidal decisions, which I mean, it was legendary considering his track record.
Considering Felix characters and their inevitable life cycle, which is start off, get real powerful, and then do something borderline suicidal and miraculously survive or die. Rip Gronk.
Yeah.
It was impressive that he was at such a solid and stable level for so long.
Yeah.
And yes, so you'd had this encounter at the road, and then you had headed to Faron. And another thing that you had, and I think it is important to bring it up, is during the kind of the search around Gorovia to try and find this beast, you had completed it, and then you had done another quest where you had agreed to go and relay some information about this attacks to some archaeologists.
That's right.
Yeah, one of these archaeologists was a man called Artur. And
this was a session I missed because I wasn't there when they met the archaeologist.
Yeah, so the party had kind of arrived and had met him and relayed the information. And originally there was 2 archaeologists. No spoilers about what happens to the other one just yet. But they had arrived and then they had kind of carried on this information, and the archaeologists in exchange had subcontracted the party. That's a mouthful. To go into the ruins and try and just kind of protect them from anything that might be down there that's particularly dangerous, because they'd gone in before, but they had heard weird noises and so they backed out. So the party go in and they find this. I believe it was kind of like this kind of not a gelatinous cube, but like a creature. And the party had killed it, and they had kind of uncovered through, I think, Zenovia's Eyes of the Runekeeper feature, that this was effectively like a temple to the dwarven god of greed. And there was a very famous writings from the dwarven god of greed, from a paladin of the dwarven god of greed, which was Paladon, of course, completely taking from the AI D&D campaign Donald Trump's character, and the texts are just me searching up like quotes from the Art of the Deal and then giving them to Seb, and just
unbelievable.
Zenovia have these holy written works of scripture, which are just random quotes, and like sometimes
I have the best paladins, I have the best religion. And no one has as good a religion as me.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have it.
I mean, some of the quotes are brilliant. Like I had one that I was like, "Oh, ChatGPT, hey, give me a quote that sounds like it could be from the Art of the Deal, but means absolutely." And one of them is like, "Remember, the secret to any trade negotiation and gaining the upper hand is a well-timed hair flip." And so Seb has taken that, and every once in a while, when Zenovia's trying to make a persuasion check, she'll flip her hair. And as like, in game, kudos, he's taking the notes. I'll give him a point of inspiration, which he immediately uses like advantage, which is, it's a good way of working it. And I think it is quite funny to kind of, just build that in-game lore. But yeah, this all kind of breaks down, and the party solve with this issue, and then they start hearing war horns, and they get word, as Absalom is scanning on the outside, that there are orcs now charging towards the cave, and then the party get this kind of very close tooth and nail fight, where they find one of these like abandoned buildings in this archaeological site in this cave, and they hold it off. And I think that's when Yuri first transforms into a werewolf.
Oh, no, I was there for that. I was there for that, because that was the session. That was the first session when we had so Yuri turned into a werewolf, and then Zenovia turned into a monster, and then we had someone else turn into something.
Absalom revealed his vampire powers.
Yeah, and Absalom turned into a vampire. I was like, what the fuck? What the fuck?
Yeah, and then Poacher was there. Like, considering Poacher's backstory, Poacher was the quote
now. I thought
one.
Herschel was alive for that one. I might be getting myself muddled up.
No,
because I think that happened. I think that happened the first time we left Gorovia, when we headed down to the Dwarven place.
Yes. This it was before Herschel's death. Yeah. Sorry, I had to double back because I know that we were kind of speed running through the sessions a bit and trying to cover everything. But I felt like
I was looking through the memes trying to think
where
was this must have been included somewhere. But so that was earlier.
Yeah, and you had met this archaeologist called Artur, and just for Yuri reasons and for Felix reasons, he had said that he would investigate some of the leads as a kind of like a thank you to the party. He'd made friends with you, he'd traveled you guys for a bit, and the first time you guys had gone to the Temple of Timora, he'd kind of stayed at the Temple of Timora and had been doing some research.
That's right.
And he was this kind of NPC that is meant to be like the party's friend. He's a guy that if you guys need really obscure information, you can approach him and he'll try and do his best to find something.
Contact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he had kind of, one of the reasons why you're going to Faron was because he lives in Faron. And he had kind of sent a message after you completed the kind of Garovia arc that he had some further information for Yuri, but he was still working on anything for Zenovia. He couldn't find anything yet, but he'd keep looking. And so you had kind of arrived into Faron, you give him this newspaper, you hear about this grisly kind of murder, and
when we entered into Faron, that was when Yuri decided to put a mask on.
Yes, yeah, I mean, completely. I mean, related. Not related.
We knew he was wanted, so like it was a reasonable thing to do. But then he went into the, we went to go speak to the sort of general captain,
yes,
the sort of commanding martial officer of the Faron Guard, in order to tell her about the beast attacks. It was an official quest. But we had told Yuri to stay outside. He was wanted, of course, but he didn't. So he went in, and they asked, "Why are you wearing a mask?" He said, "Well, it's part of my religion." And they said, "Well, take it off," and
and he refused. When he was arrested,
and then they arrested him.
They arrested him, and they were like, "Wait, we're gonna take the mask off now." They take the mask off, and they're like, "Oh, you're a wanted man." And so then I think the party then go to the Lord of Faron, and effectively like try and barter for Yuri's release. And I think you guys almost get the deal, which is the deal that you had arranged was that if you could solve these murders, the Prince of Faron would try his best to pardon Yuri.
We did basically have that deal, but we did have, unfortunately, a character with us who didn't have amazing social graces. We had an ex-clown who managed to talk us down out of the deal into a removal from the building by insulting the warriors around him.
He was insulting the warriors, and then he turned around. I think as he was leaving, he turned around and said something snarky to the Lord, and the Lord basically was like, "Get back here! No, I'm not going to help your friend. Piss off."
I mean, lots of the party members were angry. I found it hilarious. I was super fine with Khalid.
This was, everyone was confused. Like, oh, Khalid's dressed as a clown and he's a bard, but he's not said anything funny this entire campaign so far.
Why would you assume someone dressed as a clown was funny though? Clowns are horrifying. Like, when was the last time you heard a person literally dressed as a clown make a funny joke? Because I mean, I definitely can't remember one.
It's hard to say.
But things to think about.
I don't know. I feel like clowns have got a bad rep in recent years. And, we should bring them back.
I mean, no. Jesters, maybe. No clowns. The aftermath of that was that, like, we decided that even though we didn't have the deal, if we found the murderer, either we might get clemency for catching the murderer and stopping the murders. But then we began to formulate a plan because we knew that Yuri was going to be executed. We got news because the Stone Clingers made it big, and people in the streets were blaming like Yuri for a lot of stuff. So the party had lots of problems to deal with, but we also had a lot of options. So we spent a lot of time sitting down and arguing. I think maybe like 2 or 3 sessions where we basically just discussed plans. And
I was. To be fair, I was kind of happy to sit back because it was like, you know what, you guys are engaging in the game. It makes sense. I'll sit and wait. For about the first like 2 hours, and then it hit hour 3, and I was like, okay, guys.
And by the time hour 5 rolled around, you were getting getting out to see. I mean,
I was like, oh, can I throw a Tarrasque at them at this level? It's,
rocks fall, everyone dies. Come on, guys, let's start again. We ended up sort of going for multiple stages, so sort of hedging our bets. The first bit was Absalom going around to various bars, sowing rumors that the Stone Clingers were responsible for the murders, because instead of saying that they're werewolves, they're beasts, you know, there were lots of deaths, and I heard that the Stone Clingers had lots of deaths, and they're the monsters responsible for murders. And so we had a vague idea that we might be able to pin the murders on them. And the idea behind that was that when we got to the execution, we wanted to have a big enough crowd or a big enough protest that either the mayor had to stop or delay the execution out of local pressure, or sort of popularity, or that we'd have a big enough crowd that we could cause a riot. Literally storm them with numbers.
And I think honestly, I think we'll get to the kind of combat and how that went after. But in terms of the preparation, it was a good plan. Like,
it was a good plan.
Good plan, and I think you had decided this, at least in game wise, like 2 days before Yuri's murder was officially. Sorry, Yuri's not murder, execution was officially going to happen. So you had done this, and you'd gone about prepping it for a day, and you basically had like another day to spend, and so you're like, you know what, we'll solve the murder.
Well, I mean, we wanted to solve the murders because if we stopped, that was our idea, was that to make it proper official and then making it like a lasting effect so they wouldn't be able to follow us. If we stopped the murders happening after the Stone Clingers were routed, it would confirm the suspicions that they were responsible. That was the general idea. But also, we're like, we might catch the killer and we might be able to like bribe the Prince of Ferron. And I believe we split up and, we looked over, we visited Olga, the hag. We visited all sorts, and we tracked it down to a beautiful woman in red, I think, who was bribing children with sweets to go to different locations. And we had
with red hair.
So we tracked her down to a shop that she was, but that appeared to only be like a second location. So a place where she was meeting up with the children, luring them in, and then bribing them. We then had, I think it was Mog, tailed her back to her actual house, inside her house, and then had to sort of make a quick getaway. So we approached the house. She wasn't in, I think, when we got there. Like, we were already fairly suspicious. And when the children were going places, we were like, okay,
she's the one leading them.
Yeah, some of us broke away to go to the location that she sent them to prevent them from getting in, which probably saved the kids' lives.
Yes, definitely did.
My question to you then is that, because they were going into an inn, so the only person we ever met who was an actual monster was the woman. Who was in the inn, if not her, that would have been a threat?
So the inn, you would have found a contact. So effectively, she had someone that was working for her. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I think it paints a little bit more of a picture of what she was doing and why she was doing it. If we talk about who her victims were. So this woman was a serial killer, but she would kind of almost, in a kind of ritualistic way, murder like street urchins, who were all within about 10. And effectively, she would do this by luring them in with sweets, getting them to go to a contact, get them to run errands for her, basically. And then once that trust was built up, lure them into a place and kill them. And she had a contact who was working with her for his own reasons. I won't touch on that because he may be important later in the campaign. But basically, her reasons were, and this was something that you guys had discovered when you entered her house, was that she had clearly recently lost her own child, and written on the walls in kind of absolute like crazy scrawlings in like an indiscernible mess, were these kind of like weird like ritualistic monikers and like demonic symbols. I think this was when like Zenovia's Eyes of the Runekeeper kind of kicked in and came in handy as well. Is the way that I ruled it is that if anyone else stared at it for too long, you'd start to get a headache because you'd be like, what the hell is going on here? I can't really process it. This feels like just illogical and just completely disconnected. But because Zenobia could read into the actual meaning of it, Zenobia was able to get a glimpse a little bit into what she was asking for. And effectively, this woman had made a deal with something, with some power that had promised her that if she could sacrifice tenfold, effectively 10 other children, it would return her child to her. And so she was committing these murders in a blind, crazed attempt to try and get her own child back.
So this was, I mean, it was very clear that it was not worldly. So I imagined at the time that this is the work of some deal made with a demon or a devil. Yeah. I don't know. We never really talked about, is there a distinction between them in your world, or are they the same sort of creature?
I think in my world, they probably fulfill a bit more of a similar purpose.
I mean, the individuals, I imagine, are more varied, but like the nature of the creature is more similar.
Yeah, the nature of the creature is the same.
Right.
It takes a bit more from like the kind of the biblical idea of like what a demon is compared to like the D&D kind of distinction between the devils and the demons in typical lore.
Well, I mean, I always thought that in the typical sort of fairy tale fashion, the difference between a demon and a fairy tale and a devil was that the devil was cunning, but a demon wasn't. Like a demon was just evil, but a devil was smart.
Yeah, I guess in my world, it's more that like you just have smart demons and you have demons that use just brute force. But I kind of wanted to keep them along the same lines of like their idea is to control you and to come up with a way of corrupting you. So in this case, you were certain it was otherworldly. I wouldn't say you were certain that it was a demon.
No. We hadn't encountered enough demons to know that it was demonic, but we definitely saw that it was like, okay, so this is some ritual shit. So either it's like blood magic, or like maybe it was a hag or a witch, or something was wrong.
Worship to a god.
Like it definitely wasn't. The fact that Eyes the Runekeeper sort of worked and translated this confirmed that this wasn't just the ravings of a lunatic.
Yeah, like clearly, while it was clearly the actions of a lunatic and a crazy person, it was also
but there was something else going on behind the madness.
Exactly, that there was a logic there, or a deal there.
I think we busted it. We looked in her house first while she wasn't there, and then we split up to find her.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for us, the person that did find her was Absalom. Absalom found her and took her down an alleyway. Basically accused her of the murders to her face.
Yeah. And then she immediately went like full gremlin mode on him.
Yeah.
And tried to stab him and then run away.
Yep. I mean, she did run. I think she did get away from it originally.
Yes. But she ran back to her house.
Which is where we were.
Exactly.
We beat the shit out of her, and tied her to a chair.
Yep.
And we we beat the shit out of her, and there was like a debate on how far we would go. I think the line was like, "I can murder a woman, but I'm not going to steal her trousers."
Yep.
Like those are the like weird lines that we would and wouldn't cross.
It was,
yeah, we'll kill her, but we will uphold her dignity.
And I think midway through this argument, she then misty steps away.
Yes.
And then
she dimension doored. She dimension doored. It was like proper teleportation.
Yeah. Like, so she bounced away, and the party are like, oh my god, where everyone scatters. And I think Keiko stays behind because he's like, I'm going to just investigate further. And then his passive perception picks up like noise coming from downstairs. And effectively, she had like teleported into her own basement and was hoping you'd chase after, and then she'd make a run for it.
She went downstairs and she cast a spell that muted Kaikobad.
Yeah.
Or either that or it was an injury. But it was either way, it was in the fight.
Cast silence.
Yeah.
And then the fight kind of broke out.
But I remember Kaikobad he was like muted for a considerable amount of time. Like he was like it's stuck.
She kept the silence spell up for the entire fight. Basically until
particularly brutal on the spellcaster.
Well, I just feel like they've got everything going for them. So, sometimes the marshals need time to shine,
like now, because when she was in dire straits again, still attached to the chair, she dimension toured again. I believe that was the last use that she had, unless
she was all out of spell slots.
Yeah, because like this was like last act of desperation. I'll teleport out, and she teleported because she didn't have a place within her reach. She teleported into a street, and Poacher had gone towards the tavern where her contact was, thinking, well, if that's the second location, that's where she'd go. That's where she's got an ally, clearly. So he was running that way, and that was where she decided to go. But she teleported in the middle of a busy street, so he couldn't just walk up to her and kill her. So he decided to run the cover of an alleyway. Pepper her with arrows.
Yeah, I think this is the first.
In the middle of the street.
I think it was the first time that, at least in my head, I started to contemplate the idea that maybe the real person who shot JFK was Poacher, because from like hidden out of sight, he just nails her while she's stuck in this chair in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
And this was like, I think the first time, probably from like at least the party's perspective, that they saw Poacher wasn't here to play around, and if like certain requirements were met, he would just pull the trigger.
Poacher is probably one of the first characters I've ever made to be like a combat min-max specialist.
Yeah.
Like he is a proper brutal archer. The only way he could be more brutal is if I took like a level in rogue, so that he could be gaining advantage on rolls. Like more nat 20s, because he's got a whole bunch of shit that happens on crits, and it would be incredibly brutal. But either way, he slaughtered this woman in the street. This did mean, because we had no, like, even though her house was decorated in the blood of children, we couldn't prove that it was their blood. Like, it would have been easy enough for them to say, well, this woman is a member of upstanding society, people like her in the town, and you're a bunch of strangers. You clearly decorated her house with her own blood, and then you murdered her in the street. So rather than that, we decided to just let her death remain a mystery. Yeah. We left it at that. Poacher put his bow away for a few days. And then, of course, the killing stopped, but no one ever came forward to claim responsibility for the murderer. So it's sort of like hidden heroics of the party.
Yeah, like you didn't get the bounty or whatever, but you solved the issue.
We solved the issue, with really minimal damage. No other innocent person was killed, which
exactly.
is amazing by our standards.
Yeah, and property damage, very minimal.
Very minimal.
Yeah. And I guess I think this probably leads on to the second subplot that was or the main plot that was happening around this subplot, which was that Yuri's whole kind of while you guys were doing this, Yuri was being interrogated by the Stormking.
Yeah.
And the Stormking, just because I think it's important we flesh it out here, if where else, because I don't think this has really been covered elsewhere in the campaign, but the Stormking are a group of mercenaries that Yuri joined early on in his life as a way of kind of bringing money home to his family who was struggling a little bit on the farmland. And the whole context behind it is in the Kingdom of Novogorsk, where Yuri's from, there is kind of like a group of Oldorfi immigrants that have kind of traveled over there originally for the promise of kind of work as mercenaries. And as the kind of the Kingdom of Novogorsk has got less need for mercenaries now, they are kind of stuck there. They still have land, but the land they have isn't that great. And a lot of them look for jobs. And so there is the Stormking is one of these mercenary groups that recruits almost exclusively from that area and then offers their assistance for a high price anywhere in Argia. And the leader of theirs is this massive kind of large Oldorfi gentleman called Aldrich Kotz, very, very physically strong, very imposing. And he's kind of Yuri's ex-boss. And spoiler alert, as Yuri's getting interrogated by him, he reveals to Yuri that he's the person that turned him into a werebear.
And he was the person that unleashed him upon his allies.
Exactly. And that the entire point of it was that he wanted to create another werebear because he wanted to, quote unquote, promote Yuri by getting him to go do this and then kill the group.
So this person valued sort of bloodthirstiness and cruelty in his soldiers.
Yeah. Like he wanted efficient, effective, complete void of morality killers.
Right.
And so
was this outlook like an effect of the curse, or was this outlook present before this person became a lycanthrope?
So I think it was probably that it was present before, and that so the Stormking have existed for quite a long time. So the root of the Stormking and like the way they passed down the kind of werebear curse and the lycanthropy has kind of like continued throughout. Each like mercenary captain has followed down the footsteps, and each one's been a werebear. But Aldrich in particular is like pretty vicious. And in particular, he's something in my world that's called a Gedulus, which is a werewolf that has eaten other werewolves. So it's like has cannibalized. Yeah, has actively like gained more strength by consuming other werewolves.
Oh my god, it's like Highlander. So by destroying others of his kind, he grows stronger.
Exactly. And
does that mean that if he were to be the only werebear left on the world, he would be like immensely powerful?
Oh yeah. Like
interesting.
It's a situation where like dominoes wise, if too many fall, he'll become unstoppable. And by consuming another werewolf, he also like artificially increases his own lifespan.
So, I see. So they're like they're like a bunch of separate cells of the same curse. And so by concentrating the curse into less space, it grows stronger.
Yeah, exactly. And so what he's been doing has been like, Aldrich is actually like close to I think 80, but he looks only like 45, and that's largely because he's turned plenty of others, keeps them around for a couple of years, and don't work out or aren't loyal to him, he'll just kill.
Right.
And so Yuri was a failed experiment in his eyes because he had sent Yuri off, activated him among Yuri's like closest colleagues, one of which was Yuri's best friend called Vargas. And effectively, the only reason Yuri didn't kill all of his men, all the men that he was with, was because that he basically killed everyone except from Vargas. And after striking Vargas, he had like a moment of realization, which had basically given his willpower enough time to break out of it, and he fled. And so Vargas was mortally wounded, if it wasn't a werewolf wound, and kind of transformed by Yuri. And then he then blames Yuri for the whole thing. He's being kind of kept in the dark by Aldrich on purpose because he's got leverage over him. Yeah, exactly. And
that being said, when we met Vargas in the city, it did seem like he was pretty cruel and pretty sort of expression. So is that the curse's effect?
No, that's just a matter of like being under Aldrich's rule for that long. So Yuri, I guess,
so even though Yuri was this guy's friend, this guy was always like kind of a sociopath.
Well, no, because I don't think.
I mean, not always, but like by the time he became a werewolf.
Oh, wait, as Yuri's friend? Are we talking about Vargas or are we talking about Aldrich? Because
Vargas.
I don't think Vargas, from my perspective, hasn't acted in a way that was particularly brutal to anyone.
Well, here's the thing:
he didn't attack any civilians.
He did. Me.
Well, he attacked Poacher after Poacher fired an arrow at Aldrich.
Yeah, but he didn't see me fire the arrow.
He saw you fire the arrow. No,
I only made his boss evaporate.
Yeah, I'm not letting that on slide. No. Anyway, just for a quick recap for those who weren't there, which is everyone except from Yuri. Yuri was kind of kidnapped. He was getting interrogated by the guy. Not really interrogated. Basically, Aldrich was using as an opportunity to reveal to him some secrets and to basically.
He was gloating. He was monologuing. It was evil villain monologue.
Exactly. And then Vargas then visits Yuri the night before Yuri is going to die, and basically asks why he did it. Because in Vargas's idea, he's been kept in the dark. He can't put together that the person who was his best friend has just turned on everyone. And Yuri basically says this, and then Vargas's response isn't a good one. His response is, "You're lying. Like, why did I even come? I can't believe that you'd say this to me." And then basically leaves a bit confused.
Yeah, Vargas, he's not a guy that we would sort of say has amazing individual thought.
Yeah.
Bit of a sheep, which is ironic.
Well, yeah, because he is a werewolf. But
because he's a bear.
But I would say, I think honestly, I think that's probably a bit of a harsh interpretation of Vargas, because I think in my head, and I think Yuri probably feels the same way about Yuri. Aldrich had a lot before Aldrich basically turned on him, and Aldrich slipped his mask up, took his mask off after he revealed that it was him that turned him. Yuri saw Aldrich as like a father figure, and I imagine it was the same with Vargas, because Aldrich, by actual purpose and decision, would go and get these young guys of 10 to 11, and would raise them, be a father to them, so that they were utterly loyal to him. And
so boys that have not a single bone of cynicism in their body, they just don't have the capacity to idealize the idea that they might be betrayed.
It was just from such a young age that he was so formative in their kind of understanding of the worldview that he could really shape them. And so for many of these people, they feel a sense of loyalty to him because they see him as like a father. And I guess it was
so whenever he does this big ritual where he gets some guy to kill all of the Stoneclingers, does he actually do another decade of finding all these young men and raising them up again?
No. So when he does this, it's almost it's not he'll take a small group of them, maybe 5 people, send them off, and then
yes, but I thought
not relay it onto anyone else. He was.
But when Yuri transformed, there was more than 5, wasn't there? There was a lot.
But it was maybe about 8.
8. In my head,
it,
I don't know where I got the idea, but I was like picturing like 100, like an empty
no,
campsite,
no,
butchered bodies everywhere.
I don't think the Stormcloak number more than maybe 300, like at full strength. So
Right.
realistically, it was about 8.
Wow, that really turns down the drama by a megaton. I was like, these guys are a serious threat. They could take on an army by themselves. No, apparently that is not the case.
Well, I mean, there's still 300 people, but they're like 300 like super elite warriors. Each in their own right. You got to think about
that's
like,
true. And I guess as we kill them,
stronger.
each individual one of them grows stronger. So that is like a pretty existential threat.
Yeah, and especially considering the fact that not all of them are werewolves. Only like the top 6 are. Like,
that's well, that's not bad at all then.
Yeah. Well, you still got.
Well, here's the thing about elite troops: they're warriors and they're mercenaries, which means they know a lot about combat, but other things can get them killed very easily. The first of all being disease, which will fuck them so royally in the most recent turn of events of our campaign. I mean, like mercenary camps not being known for their amazing hygiene.
Well, yes, but also these are elite enough that like they're elite at like but they're very well trained. They they build proper camps. They maintain proper camp hygiene. However, still diseases can go through them pretty quickly.
I can't imagine that the werebears would be too affected by it, though. I mean, do they have like some level of supernatural resistance, given that it is a supernatural disease?
Right. Yeah, I would imagine that the lycanthropy, like as a disease or as like a virus, would just kind of like consume any other foreign kind of plague or pathogen. It's a bit like the way that I guess in this case, like this isn't really kind of, I don't know if it is knowledge yet to Felix, but the way that like Yuri has probably got advantage on most rolls against diseases in the world, just because his lycanthropy offers him protection from that.
So, should we be treating? Sorry, I was just saying, like, should we be treating injury like diseases like injuries? So if we have like a disease table that's a bit like an injury table, like sort of similar effects.
Yeah, like I could see, even like if after you catch it, like there may be diseases that would have like long lasting effects as well.
So rather than taking an injury, you could take a disease, which could be like more variable in its debilitatingness.
I actually think that even in the table that we use with the diseases, if you take like poison damage or like necrotic damage, you can take like disease, diseased elements or like diseased injuries.
Oh, I suppose from necrotic you could take like necrosis or cancer or like one of these sort of like rotting sort of diseases.
If you roll a 5 or a 7, you get minor organ necrosis.
Jesus Christ, that is brutal.
It's like 4 it's like major, and then like below that it's like withered foot, withered hand. It's pretty brutal, pretty harsh.
Would cancer then be more towards radiation damage? Because that's the more microwave level damage type.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, that is essentially the idea between... There's a spell called Sickening Radiance, which is essentially that. It's like a microwave.
It actually has here that, like, just on a minor one, you lose hair and you have, like, cosmetic damage.
But jeez.
You can have, like, small skin tumors.
Oh, it is that? Oh, God.
Like, it gets real bad.
That's horrifying.
So, yeah.
Well, let's hope.
Let's hope what you no.
Let's hope we don't.
Let's hope you avoid it. Yeah.
Encounter any of those. Poacher might have to, set a social distancing via bow and arrow.
Yeah. From any radiant damage.
No people coming within 100 feet, please.
Could you imagine? Keiko Bad gives you guys all like cancer by the end of the campaign just through like sacred flames.
We go to the doctor. Apparently, according to our readings, you've been subjected almost daily to cosmic radiation. Damn it! Starlight.
Everyone turns like, Keiko, why aren't you affected? And he's like, God has me. I've got God on my side.
You guys haven't been taking the pills. Anyway,
yes, continuing
the
on.
plan.
This all happens with the plan. You guys
The day comes.
rouse this mob. Yeah. Absalom is singing "Can You Hear the People Sing?" As he leads this kind of large parade of people, quite in quite a rowdy state, towards the execution of Yuri, which has kind of had like a gallows set up, and effectively Yuri's going to be hanged. And yeah, I think the combat encounter begins with Aldrich putting the noose on Yuri, and then I said to you guys just in like I'm saying, effectively, Yuri has however many turns, which is equal to his Constitution modifier, which I think was +3 at a turn, before like he actually starts choking out, and then he'll take like 10 points of bludgeoning damage every turn until he either dies or you guys free him from the noose.
It's gonna be a real slow death given his health.
Yeah,
pretty brutal to watch.
Like it would have been like a couple of turns.
Yeah.
And at least from when he would start to like choke.
So we had Zenobia Kaikobad inside the crowd, and we had Absalom up on a statue podium, and Poacher had climbed onto the rooftops behind the stone clingers. To his knowledge, he hadn't been seen. That was not the case. Vargas had gone through the buildings, but he didn't. That wasn't a problem for him until the fight started. I think Poacher was the person that struck first.
Yeah, Poacher, I think, opened it up by hitting Aldrich with a banishment arrow, and then the turn after. Then action surging and immediately hitting Yuri's the rope that was holding Yuri up.
Yep.
So kind of like, yeah, starting off on a good pace.
It was incredibly brutal because the banishing arrow, the DC isn't that high, but it's charisma save, which means the stone clingers. I mean, you can tell me I'm wrong. I can't imagine they had amazing charisma.
Yeah, no. Even Aldrich, who like, had the highest charisma, his was still like nothing above like a +2.
Yeah. So it wasn't a high DC, but they it was still like a 50-50. We got the roll we wanted, and the banishing arrow, it vanished him for that turn, but it also only brought him back at the end of his next turn.
Yeah, so he was gone for 2 turns.
Yeah, and he lost out 2 turns from that. It was brutal.
He really was the biggest threat there.
That's what I figured.
I think there were 3 of the kind of the close knit of the stone cling in there who were like actually trying to stop you. One, at least Vargas, I will say this. Yuri's conversation with Vargas and Yuri's roll that he had made, this persuasion roll, had brought enough of doubt into Vargas's mind that Vargas's attacks weren't lethal. They were just going to knock you out. But the other guy who is like
not that I needed the sympathy,
right hand man. Yeah, exactly. The other guy who was Aldrich's right man is a guy called Ingomar, and him and Aldrich were looking for blood. If you were trying to stop it, they were going to try and murder you. And they also had like kind of, I think it was about 8 other just lower ranked stone clingers that were kind of holding the outpost. They
were keeping the fray from reaching the stand.
Yeah, and then I think after that, Absalom kind of Spider climbed up a fountain.
Yeah, he was on the top of a statue at a fountain.
Yeah, I think something vicious mockery or something.
Yes, from afar.
At them.
And one of them tried to run up and grab him, and he had to sort of walk down the fountain. And it was all sorts of crazy stuff. I do want to ask you, at the beginning... Oh, sorry. At the beginning of that fight, what did Ingomar think when he saw his boss vanish?
Ingomar, well, I think he must have just thought, what the fuck? Like, in Ingomar's head, he was shook. And was just trying to... Like, his initial response was anger. His initial response was, they've just killed my father figure, and I'm going to find out who's done this and murder them.
You think there was like a little bit of fear in there, given how quick it was?
Almost certainly. But I guess his response would have been to try and just lash out at what it was.
So that put Yuri in a particularly bad spot, given that he was the rope was cut and he was right in front of the fucking guy.
Yeah. So I think Ingomar immediately ran and started trying to kill Yuri. Effectively try and complete whatever Aldrich had planned. As like an act of, if I go down, at least bring you down with me. And then we had this kind of these rules with the crowd where every turn, like as a lair action, effectively, the crowd would do something that would change the parameters of the battlefield, whether that be like shoving people in or pulling people into the crowd or constricting or I don't know, throwing tomatoes and rocks and bricks at
general
people.
Melee. So
exactly.
We didn't succeed in getting a proper riot because the crowd seemed to be like a war with itself. Like there were people fighting each other rather than the stone clingers, which was unfortunate, but it did provide a nice cover for Zenova and Kaikobad.
Yeah, it meant that like they could kind of roam through and like surprise attack the stone clingers who are you and Yuri. And then I guess it looked like, I think after these two turns had happened, you had managed to get Yuri back and escape Vargas after having this kind of tense moment on the roof where he chased you down. And
he chased me down. He attacked me on the roof and he was in melee while I had my bow out. Not great. So what I decided to do was I threw a silver powder smoke grenade.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, lycanthropes, silver, that's well known. Why don't we just make silver bombs? So that's what we made. We had a bunch of those. So we threw those onto the thing, upsetting people, upsetting the lycanthropes.
Yeah.
Poacher wanted to chop one up and throw it as he dove off the roof, firing and performing the great slow-mo stunt. Unfortunately, he missed. And instead, he just fell backwards onto the street. But then, Vargas jumped down and he sort of attacked him a bit. But Poacher managed to set off a few more bombs point blank. And it hurt Poacher a bit, but he fucking managed to escape. And he ran straight into the podium. He grabbed Yuri, who was, I think he had been beaten pretty close to unconsciousness. But Ingomar, I think he managed to like subdue Ingomar or do something.
Yeah, I think you were able to use another one of the smoke bombs, or one of the silver bombs again, which made Ingomar blind for a turn. And so he was kind of like blindly.
I don't think it was Poacher. I think it might have been Kaikobad or that used it.
I think it was Keiko that did it, and then effectively Ingomar came back, and you had just got through the crowd, grabbed Yuri, and were about to get away when Ingomar basically turned and used his movement to get next to you and attack you. I think he slashed you and he slashed Yuri once, bringing you both at this point pretty low.
We were both extremely low. Like I think I ended that fight within like 10 HP.
Oh yeah, like it was, at least for you two, it was really close. I think for Zenova, she didn't take any damage. Keiko had taken like a little bit.
The rescuers went off without a hitch, minus a few 50 levels of hit points. But that all paled in comparison to our getaway distraction, helpfully provided by Zenobia. Wasn't asked to provide it, didn't know it was going to be provided.
Yeah, it just kind of out of nowhere. None of the party had ever seen do anything like this before. You were beginning to like get to the crowd, but Aldrich was nearby. Zenobia turns and summons two massive demons.
But she was going for summon like minor demon, wasn't she?
Yeah. So the way that we're ruling it in my world, just because I think it's more fun, is we've replaced summon minor demon and summon major demon. Summon lesser demon and summon greater demon with the same roll table, but when she does summon lesser demon, she has less control over it. And so she can summon stuff that are way more powerful, but if it's lesser, they're able to issue like one order, which they'll follow to the letter of the law, maybe sometimes try and twist it. But then after that, she's got like no control over them. And so she does this to kind of get the Yuri away, and unleashes 2 massive demons into this very crowded square, and then all chaos breaks loose. I think they go into the crowd. One of them grabs Ingmar at the start and just hurls him through a building. And then you have this big moment where, like, the Stormcling are eyeing up, trying to get Yuri, or trying to get to you guys, or to try and save the crowd. And ultimately, you guys get away. But the Stormcling do kind of get a positive spin on the situation, because they get to be shown as being heroes, because, at least in their perspective, they helped the crowd, and they were seen as being like the saviors from these demons.
What I don't understand is how, given that the Stoneclingers were fighting the crowd and the demons appeared at their execution.
Yeah. Well,
do the Stoneclingers have like a sort of PR contact who's swinging stuff in the city for them?
Basically, it's just the Lord.
So
and the rather prickly thing, the prickly encounter he had with you, Aldrich went to the Lord and was like, "Yeah, my men have just had to deal with an insurrection led by these group of people, and they summoned demons. Oh, and by the way, it's the same people that, like, this guy murdered them. So he's now gaslighting the Lord of Ferron into absolutely despising you." Yeah.
I see. Damn. So we, if we ever head back to Ferron, we are gonna not be in for the welcome that we are expecting.
Yeah,
that's
you're
that's pretty spooky.
In big shit, especially if you got anyone in the city itself.
And the person that we've really got to thank for all this goodwill is Yuri, for his intelligent decision making.
Yeah, because as Zenobia put it after the session, she immediately turned and said, "How many innocents died for you to be free?" The Yuri didn't ask to be rescued, or didn't ask Zenobia to cast the demon spell.
I mean, in her defense, she didn't mean for it to summon demons, but in terms of kill count, she definitely had the highest.
Oh my, yeah. Let's just say the blood is definitely on her hands. But she's gonna just gaslight Yuri into thinking it's his fault as well.
Yeah. She was guilt tripping the shit out of him.
Yeah, I guess anyway, just to kind of bring us up, at least for next episode, into a place where we'll be very, very, very able to kind of recap the current arc that we're on. The party then leaves Ferron because you guys have a contact in town called Greasy Jack, who is basically a caravan merchant, and he's looking for some guards to help guide a caravan out of Ferron and towards the city of Lugo, which is in the north. And you guys basically decided after this that you were gonna hop on that caravan and get the hell out. And so you did. And yeah, you started heading towards Lugo and to the north. I think that's probably where we should finish the recap for the session. I think we can start talking about what happened in Lugo. But do you think there's anything else we've missed?
We had some subtle. So the one person in the party who I'd say is the most mysterious, but also possibly has the most potential to be, whose backstory has the biggest potential to be like a world-changing force, is Kaikobad. Yes. And the only revelation we had about Kaikobad, because we really didn't know anything about him, like he did not speak to us really in a huge amount, didn't really reveal stuff. We heard him being referred to as the Crimson Tide, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
And we have no fucking idea what the Crimson Tide is, but we know that Kaikobad is the Crimson Tide.
Yeah. So we'll have Matt explain a little bit about that, but yeah, and I mean the Crimson Tide is just for any American college football fans. Crimson Tide's a nickname for the Alabama football team. So maybe Keiko played football for played American football for the University of Alabama. But we'll have him on to talk about his some of his backstory, because it is, at least from my notes, it's very spicy, and has very cool connotations moving forward. Yeah, I guess other than that, is there anything else you want to add, Nick?
Next time we've got murder, vampires, vampire bats, orcs, and a whole lot. Yeah, a whole lot of issues with nobles. Good grief. Yeah. And a whole lot of issues with Absalom.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week, sir. Take care.
Bye.